وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. The virtue of forgiveness and good treatments. العفو والإحسان. What comes to mind when we talk about forgiveness and when we use the word, we use the term forgiveness? What does forgiveness mean? Yes.
Human forgiveness or God forgiveness?
Forgiveness.
No, if someone makes you
Okay.
treat you wrongfully,
Yeah.
and you forgive them and don't have to.
Okay, so it's a reaction to what has been done to you.
Yes.
And okay, so when I forgive someone, what does that mean?
That means I have no grudge, so I forgive.
I'm not going to hold it against you.
Yes.
Okay, you're not going to hold whatever it is against them. Where?
It's like what it
In front of Allah.
Yes.
But what if I ask for my money back? Did I forgive them or no? So he stole my money from me, and I'm like, okay, I forgive you, give me my money back.
No, you can forgive without getting.
You can forgive the conduct, but you need your probably your goods. I think that
I'm sorry?
if you want your money, but
Uh-huh.
you forgive that he stole it from you,
Okay,
that you are forgiving the action which was haram
okay,
in the sight of Allah.
yeah.
But you will not. You still want your goods.
You still want, okay,
Or I have a choice to forgive for both. Like,
okay.
keep
Sorry.
the money and then forgive you.
Mashi, what were you saying, Ops?
No, we're saying like it's possible to forgive and let them keep the money. But
Yeah.
It can happen.
I mean, maybe, I don't know.
It's possible.
Yeah. Yes.
You gotta be kind.
You have to be kind? So what does that mean?
Be kind to be with you.
Like how?
Not have spite.
Like let them, like give them money?
Yeah.
Harder.
There's a problem with that. Like if I forgive, they might do it again.
You can forgive
Sure.
and set boundaries.
Okay. So how do I forgive and set boundaries?
You can keep your distance from that person, or you can
Just
choose
say-
not to give that person money again. If you give your money, you return it.
So what you're proposing is forgiveness with a change in the nature of the relationship. But that's still forgiveness. Okay.
Are you asking the question so we can say something like, you can forgive the person in the dunya, but not in the akhirah, vice versa, or both?
Okay. Sure. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Like, you can forgive the person here, like, okay, I forgive you. Does that mean giving the money back?
I don't know. I'm asking.
I don't know either. I'm
Okay.
asking.
Yes. Tfadal.
Can I forgive and still give the money back?
I don't know.
Well,
That's-
you got the money back.
I'm just curious. Is that forgiveness? So what Zamzam saying is that you can forgive the action, but not necessarily the
The stolen thing.
the stolen the wrong.
The nature of how they do.
Okay, so forget money. Somebody hit me.
I still.
Do I hit back?
the same.
It's the same?
Yes, he hit me. That's the wrong action. Besides the-
Can I hit him back and forgive him?
I mean, you took
Yeah, that's
revenge.
yes, but if we're talking about Allah's eyes,
Uh-huh.
it is virtue to forgive the action and also the wrong things that
And-
and don't act.
Okay.
But if you took revenge, it's not forgiveness.
But if I take the money, is it
But
forgiveness?
it's still allowed. Wasn't it like the lowest of the things
You're
that
able
we
to
can? It was like you can oppress back, and it's the lowest, but it's still
Yeah.
allowed.
Yes.
Do scholars differentiate between sulah and forgiveness?
They're different things, right? Sulah is bringing people together, and forgiveness is when it involves me personally. So as sulah, either you can do it as a first party, or you can do it as a third party. But afu is something actually happened to me. So you guys mentioned a few things. Some of them separating between the action, the deed. You guys also talked about rights being taken. And I think you guys are more comfortable with financial rights being returned than other ones. Like, so, what's another good? Somebody steals my car for a couple weeks. And then they give it, yeah. Or I catch them, right? I catch them and I'm like, hey, give me my car. And he's like, all right, here.
You can still sue though.
Huh?
You can still sue.
So over here, there's no money that was taken. And what if now the gas tank it was like on empty before, but now it's full, but it has 200 more miles on it.
So that's still
I mean, he stole it.
he stole
allowed.
right? Because stealing is what? Taking somebody's right or property without permission, right? With permission is different, but without permission it's not. So if there's no consent, then it's going to count as stealing. But is there any way for him to return those 200 miles to me?
Financial compensation.
Oh, wait, some dates.
Some dates, right? I can milk the car. What are you saying?
No, that's okay. I would have thought like mentally like gas, like how do you compensate, but I wouldn't have gone so far as to be like, how are they going to pay me back for my mileage?
I mean, mileage is wear and tear on the car.
Yeah, it is a vibe.
What if it's 200 miles that he drove uphill on a rocky road?
Or
Yeah, you're gonna say something?
You can get you a new engine.
He can get you a new engine. Wow. Wow. That's a serious demands. For 200 miles, that's like super petty. That's so petty. But yeah, stealing is petty. That's true. So I mean, there are some things that become gray, right? So when you're talking about, there can be abuse to the person, there can be abuse to the property, or there can be like an actual recompense. Like, so if somebody steals $200 from me and they spend it and then they give me another $200, have they returned my right or no? Yeah, they have, right? Am I going to ask for the, like, is it from my right to ask for the same bills? Like, no, these are 50s. I wanted 20s.
no.
If you want to be difficult.
Like, if you want to be difficult, but here, remember how we had talked before about how the oppressor can actually become the oppressed, right? And vice versa. And how like fine that line can become. And I think that's part of it, right? If somebody's giving me back 50s and he stole all the 20s from me, I might be upset because I wanted loose, you know what I mean? Loose change. But is it fair for me to do that? No. Just because I've been hurt, it doesn't allow me now to hurt someone else. So forgiveness does have stages. I mean, I agree with what a lot of you guys said. Is it possible that I forgive the person in the akhirah, but not in the dunya? Like what? Can you give me an example?
I believe there's no forgiveness if you, I mean, we're talking about in the sight of Allah. If I forgive you in the dunya but have to correct you after, what's the purpose?
So when does that happen?
You know, you can either, if you don't forgive the person in akhirah, Allah will keep that person
Accountable.
to bring in front of him, both of you.
I understand what you're saying, but my question is when does that happen? That I forgive him in this world, but I don't forgive him in the next? Yes.
The person dies.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. That's fine. Well, I'm talking about the reverse situation. I agree with what you're saying. I'm talking about the reverse. Yes. You're gonna have to speak up a little bit.
I said when there's nothing that can be done about us, we just forgive it. And
Okay, so I want to explore that a little bit. When nothing can be done about it, am I forced to forgive? I want you guys to think about this. Yes.
Like, if somebody kills somebody else,
Yeah.
you can forgive them in this world. Here, you know.
You can forgive them in this world, but not in the hereafter? Kif.
I mean, you forgive them in this world, but
How do you forgive them in this world?
you don't take money or something.
You don't take money.
Yeah.
Okay. I would argue that the reverse only happens is because you're socially pressured. Meaning that if someone takes my money, be like, hey, come on, man, you should forgive him. Miskeen, you know what I mean? Like it was only $20, just forgive him. Why are you asking for the money back? It's not even that much. Like, you can't buy anything with $20 nowadays. And what do I feel pressured to do now? Forgive him. What's going on in my heart, though? There's still a lot of resentment. I'm still hurt. I still have a lot of resentment. I haven't navigated it. Like, I haven't dealt with it well. And usually these situations happen because you're pressured. So when you were talking about, like, when you don't have a choice, the problem is we do have a choice, but we're not willing to make it because of all these pressures that we face with. One of the most common things are social pressures. Also, and some of those social pressures are spiritual, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "In ta'fu wa tasfahu," you know, you should be forgiving, you should overlook. Why are you being so petty? Like, come on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive you? Doesn't sound very strange, does it? Yes.
In that case, then, is it not in your record that like you forgave the person?
You didn't actually forgive the person. That's the problem. Because if I'm still carrying something around in my heart, because a forgiveness is actually removing that from my heart. It doesn't mean that I don't change the nature of the relationship. Like, for example, and this happens in a lot of institutions, unfortunately. If I know that this teacher, he touched one of the kids, is it possible that the parents forgive him? Yeah, right, it's possible. Or it's even possible that the child forgives him or whatever. But does it make sense to put him in a similar position again? Absolutely not. Right? So the nature of the relationship changed, even though that there is forgiveness there. And at that point, the anger might be gone, but what might stay? So resentment is more anger, right? Like distrust. Like I think the pain. I think the pain stays, right? It's very difficult to remove the pain, and I think that's part of grieving. And grieving takes time, right? Grieving is not. It's not an easy process. And is it okay for me to carry that pain for my whole life, or do I have to let it go? You can. It's not a bad thing. So how many of you have had a death of a close friend or a family member at any point in your life? Like when you remember that person, how does it feel?
Sad.
You feel sad. Meaning that you're still what?
Hurting.
You're still carrying that sadness. It still hurts. Like every time you remember that person, you might have moments where you remember them out of happiness, for sure. But a lot of times we still carry that sadness with us. Like, is it detrimental to our lives? It can be when? Right, if you consume yourself with it, like if everything you are consumed with, because even the Prophet ﷺ, why did he set mourning to 3 days? And what does that mean? Does it mean that I can't mourn on day 4 or day 10 or year 7? No, I can continue mourning, but what are those 3 days for?
Physically.
Right, physically, I have an excuse not to work. I have an excuse not to, whatever my responsibilities to other people are, for those 3 days can be? They can be excused. My responsibilities toward Allah, they will still stand. So if I have to make zakat and it's during my mourning period, I have to what? I have to pay it. If it's prayer time, if it happens during Ramadan, I still have to fast. Right? It doesn't excuse me from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rights, but can it delay me giving the rights of others? Right. Or it can actually prevent me from fulfilling certain rights during that time. Yeah, so for example, if a wife loses her son, does she now have an excuse to go in front of her husband if her husband wants to be intimate with her?
Yes.
Or she has an excuse, right? And it's a valid excuse because she is mourning, even though the intimacy is from the rights of the husband. So these excuses definitely can be presented. These excuses can be put forward. And this is what mourning is, but it doesn't mean that you cannot mourn after a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Right? Because mourning is something that can always continue. The only thing it can't do, it can no longer be used as an excuse. It can't prevent us from actually interacting, working, dealing. And if it is, then there's a bigger problem that needs more mu'alaja. It actually needs more direction and it needs more care. Another part of forgiveness. So this is why I feel we're forgiving in this world and not in the next, is because there's still some resentment there. It's an unresolved. What if I am in a situation where I was forced to forgive someone and I didn't want to?
It's not really forgiveness.
No, okay, so I need to understand that what I've done is not really forgiveness, but now I'm kind of stuck. And who put me in this situation?
The guy who pressured you, yourself.
Myself. I can't blame other people. I put myself in the situation. But now that I put myself in the situation, what should I do? Huh? Unapologize, right? You go back and be like, I take it back. I really don't forgive you. But honestly, is that an option? Where you can go to the person and be like, hey, listen, I felt like I was pressured, but I don't think I can forgive you. You can, right? Like I felt I was pressured and I'm sorry, I can't forgive you. It's a possibility. What else can I do?
You force yourself.
You can force yourself, right? You can, because this idea of forgiveness and this idea of introspection, it really is a personal thing. And I really can introspect and I can really force myself to come to terms with those things.
I wanted to ask a question.
Tfadal.
Okay, if somebody does over and over again, step your boundaries or hurt you.
So that's your,
Over and
yeah.
over again.
That's
You forgive,
that's
finally you
Yeah.
I mean, even if you said it by mouth, as
Yeah.
you said,
Mm.
but your heart is not really forgiving.
So what do you guys think? If I forgive somebody over and over again and they keep overstepping the boundaries, what's going on? Huh? That's my fault.
That's your fault.
Yeah.
But what if finally, if I don't forgive, I mean, will that be a problem for me? Between me and Allah?
So
At the end of the day,
as long as so the thing is, we had talked about this before. When it comes to interacting with others, we're always exploring. And what are we exploring? Boundaries, right? Like we're exploring each other's boundaries. If the first interaction somebody oversteps, then that's my opportunity to what? To say something. I can say something and be like, hey, listen, I didn't like the way that you said this. Please don't talk to me like that. I've had people in my personal interactions where they'll say something, they're like, I was just joking, and my response is usually, I don't joke like that. And when I say that, what happens? Right? That person will take it more seriously, and are they going to try to transgress that bounds again? No. Right? Like it's less likely, right? And the chances that they do that means that this person doesn't what? He doesn't respect me. And it's at that point I need to make a choice. Because the thing with friendships is, and it's very different from other relationships, friendships are completely what? They're completely optional. The sad thing is with us, man, we treat friendships as many times more important than our family relations. Like we will refuse to, like we look so much for the social acceptance that we'll completely overlook our families. But it should be the other way around. Like we should be more forgiving with our families than we should with our friends. Yes?
Same thing she said, but like what if it is family?
If it's family, it's different. So even with family, and we had talked about this before, when I am trying to keep a relationship with family, is it bad? Am I not maintaining family relationship if I'm only meeting them on Eid? I want you guys to think about this. Am I not, if I'm every Eid I make an effort to reach out and to get everyone together, am I maintaining family ties or no?
Yes, you can.
I am. So this we use this term maintaining family relations. Does it mean I have to meet them every week? No. And this is what we have in our head. When we talk about maintaining family ties, many times what we have in our head is like, oh man, we have to meet them every week. But that's not the case. The only time, and I'll get to you, the only time where this becomes a problem is if I'm actively trying to avoid that family member. And when am I allowed to actively avoid a family member?
More harm than good.
Right, when it's more harm than good. Ahsant. Good. Yes, تفضل.
You say it's like different depending on what family, like what the nature of the relationship is, like if it's your parents versus
Yeah, your siblings.
siblings.
Like, where is my obligation toward? Is my obligation toward my parents or to my siblings? To your parents. And then your siblings would come after that. So we can qualify many of our relationships. So for example, if I have a wife and kids and I have my parents, who takes the first responsibility? My wife and kids. Why? Because this is something that I voluntarily got into and I created. And now that I have this, they are my first obligation. Saying that, it becomes a little bit more problematic when? Like, what if my parents are ill? Right? If my parents are healthy and independent and I have money, every time I get a paycheck, should I send half of it to my parents? No, right? Why not? No, but I'm saying you guys say logically it doesn't make sense. Like, why? Because my first obligation is who? Is to my wife and my kids. What if my parents are ill?
As much as you are able.
But not just as much as I'm able. Like, and I definitely do agree with that. But now the shift in obligation changes. Because now, even if I'm giving them $10, it's reached a point where I'm now what? Obligated to help them. And that's if they can't take care of themselves. Because now the responsibility is falling onto me. But if they're healthy and they're independent, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve and protect all our parents and have mercy on all those who have passed. But these individuals, now that if I have to contribute in some way, shape, or form, if they can't independently. But the first obligation is always going to be to your family. So the meaning of forgiveness is when a right is due to forego said right, whether it is a physical or a fiscal punishment. And this is something that you guys had mentioned. That forgiveness happens as a reaction, right? Can I forgive someone before they do anything? No, right? There has to be, it's like accepting a marriage proposal before you get it, right? So, and this is separate from forbearance or suppressing rage, because these are withholding. Right, these are withholding mechanisms. They're not actually reaction mechanisms. Does that make sense? Right? So when I show forbearance or I suppress rage, what am I doing? I'm just stopping myself. I'm not actually acting, right? I'm not actually reacting. I'm not actually doing anything. And this is why he categorizes it separately. This is why he made a chapter about afu. This is why he made a chapter about forgiveness. And then he uses Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, says, خُذُوا الْعَفْوَ وَأْمُرُوا بِالْعُرْفِ, that hold to forgiveness, command what is right. And when ta'fu أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى, that waving your right is nearer to godliness, right? Is nearer to taqwa. And then there are a few hadith that we shared here, that charity does not decrease wealth, no one forgives another except that Allah increases his honor, and no one forgives another for the sake of Allah except that Allah raises his status. So this is about the importance of forgiveness, and that it should be a character trait that we try to embody to the best of our ability. And the reason for that is because it makes us lighter people. It makes us individuals who don't thrive on spite and hate and anger and all of these negative feelings that really are things that drag us and they slow us down. They're like anger. They're like anchors. And if we truly want freedom, and if we truly want to feel happy, if we truly want to feel blessed, then we have to try to remove those things as best as we can from our hearts. I never saw Allah's Messenger take revenge for an outrage committed against him as long as none of the sacred prohibitions of Allah were violated. But if there was any violation of the sacred prohibitions of Allah, he would be enraged. Whenever he was given a choice between two matters, he would choose the easier of the two, provided it was not conducive to sin.
What was the last thing?
Huh.
Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. When the Prophet ﷺ was given two choices, if one of them had sin, what would he choose?
The less than
He would choose the one with no sin.
Oh,
Right? Even if it was what? No, no, no. No, absolutely not. It was even if it was more difficult. So if he was, if he was given two choices, and this one was really hard, and this one was really easy, but this one had sin in it, what would he choose? He'll choose the really hard one. But if he's given two things that are mubah, two things that are permissible, and this one is easy and this one is hard, what is he going to do? He's going to choose the easy one. And an example of this that a lot of people, they say like, oh, when we make Hajj, I'm going to choose the one where I have to walk and I have to go through all this. I'm like, dude, choose the easiest one. Like, Hajj is already difficult. If you can afford a nice package, buy a nice package. Why are you going to add difficulty to yourself? And if I'm making Hajj, if I can maximize my ibadah by sitting in air conditioning, and I can maximize it by eating well, if I can maximize it because I don't have to walk too much and I have like boils on my feet, am I going to be more worried, like if I start getting blisters on my feet, am I going to be more worried about the pain, or am I going to be able to focus? I'm going to worry about the pain. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you means and has made it easy for you, take advantage of the ease. It doesn't make sense for me to bring hardship upon myself. I am not here to test me. Allah does that. Right? And you know the difference between me and Allah? Allah knows my limits. Do I know my limits? No. And many times I don't. We think we know our limits, but how many of us have gone to the gym and worked out and thought we couldn't do as much, but we end up doing more? Why? Because we assume about ourselves on what we can do. Or we think that we can only study so long, or we think we can only work so long. And then we break those molds time and time again because we think we know ourselves, but when we really don't. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who knows us truly. Abu Darda was asked, who is the most honored of people? He said, the one who is able to forgive when given the opportunity. Forgive so that Allah may honor you. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, whoever supplicates against the one who has wronged him has triumphed. Ibn Mas'ud. And why is this important? How is this a sign of forbearance or forgiveness?
You're asking Allah.
Because you're asking Allah. You're not actually what? You're not taking action against the person. Ibn Mas'ud said that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, it is not appropriate for a governor to carry out a punishment unless it is established. Allah is forgiving and loves forgiveness. He then recited, وَلْيَعْفُوا وَلْيَصْفَهُ, that let them pardon and let them forgive. So over here, established meaning that it's proven, right? It's proven that this individual actually committed the crime. Don't rush to make judgment and try to give people an opportunity so that you can forgive them. And even when we deal with each other, like it's very important for us to think well and think good of other Muslims, and it's very important for us to think good of other people. If we walk around and we're constantly doubting other people, we're constantly doubting their beliefs, We're constantly doubting their intentions. We're constantly doubting who they are. What kind of person am I going to be?
Doubter.
I'm going to be a doubter, right? So, but why is that a bad thing?
Bad for your health.
I'm sorry? Yeah, okay, so me being skeptical of everyone, why is that a negative thing? How come I shouldn't be? Just like a lot of bad stuff. Does bad stuff happen or no? Right, how come, like you're telling me I should trust people? Okay, why should I have husn al-dhan? What have the people done for me that I should trust them?
I believe
Trust should be the default. Okay, why? Yes.
I think that you're letting shaitan lead you, because if you are suspicious about a person, about everything they're doing,
Okay, so you're saying that the skepticism is actually shaitan inspired.
yeah.
I agree.
Not all.
Huh? Okay, so we have a skeptic over here. Yes.
Everybody acting like that.
Huh?
This would be a terrible place to live.
Okay, why?
Constant anxiety.
Society couldn't operate.
All right, society couldn't operate, for sure. So there has to be a base level of trust that we have with each other and we have with others. I definitely do agree with that. The question comes, on what basis do I trust others? And what is the difference between trust and naivety?
Imagine putting your money in the bank. You know nothing. Like you don't know anybody.
If I don't know anyone, where?
Like we have trust to the extent that we're like putting all of our money in like banks.
Well, why do we trust banks?
There's like a system.
Well, not just there's a system, like everybody does it, right? So we're like, well, everybody can't be wrong. Like, do people get into car accidents? And this is something that we witness, right? You know, how many of us like rubberneck, every time we see an accident? So we know that car accidents happen. Has it stopped any of us from buying cars or driving them?
No.
Well, maybe some of us, right? So, but in general, everybody has a car. But I'm saying that we see a lot of these things that do bring distrust in either institutions or functions or systems, but we still engage in them. Why? All right, necessity is definitely part of it. I agree. But I would say that facilities have changed. And nowadays, like with Instacart and delivery, do I really need to leave my house? But it means I have to trust the people who are bringing the stuff, right? But you guys still haven't told me, why is this wrong?
Suspicious.
Yeah, to be constantly suspicious. Why is it wrong? You said it's shaitani, and I don't disagree with that. But my question is, all right, why is it a bad thing? Why is it shaitani? How come we can't say, no, this is actually how we should be? Yes?
Like, most of the time people are telling the truth. So
Okay.
if lying is a bad thing, it's like away from the ordinary.
Okay, so you would say that in general people are good.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Yes. Now I'll get to you. Go ahead.
I just think to plead guilty, I guess.
Why?
Give you a reason to mistrust.
Okay, so you're saying that the default is like what? I'm sorry. Astaghfirullah. This is with the W, right? Samira, yes. All right, the default is what Samira said is trust, and they have to do something to prove their trust. But I'm saying, how did that become the default? I think he's given a good reason that most people do speak honestly. Yes?
I was just going to say that it leads to arrogance when you're always, yeah.
No, mashallah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it leads to arrogance when you're always having bad opinions of others because you're holding yourself to a higher standard.
Right, because if everybody else is here, where am I?
You're higher.
Right?
So you're arrogant.
Right? If I'm looking at everyone at this level, that means that I'm standing above everyone. Absolutely. That's definitely a huge part of it. So this idea of arrogance, this idea of being doubtful in others when that's against the norm, right? To have all these things. What happens to a person who's like that? What kind of lifestyle do they have? Is that person happy? No. Generally not. Generally this person is completely unhappy. And it comes to the point where now these thoughts start consuming him, and at what point does he stop? He doesn't. Right? He just you go down into this black hole and you start doubting everything. And it's not a healthy place. Huh? Like mentally, spiritually, physically, right? So if I never leave my home, is that good for me? No. I mean, look what happened in the past 2 years. How many more people are sick now than they were before? No, very honestly. How many more people are sick now than they were before the pandemic? Why? The brothers come to, man, the pandemic really did a number. Like, why? What happened? I gained like 30 pounds. No. People just 30, mashallah. It's like he was a beginner.
He's a rookie.
He's a rookie. He doesn't know how to pandemic right. So like, so I mean, people gained weight. People stopped exercising. Like some of the places, the gyms were closed. You know, and the people were scared to go outside. And what kind of effect has that had? Like we've seen the effect that it has when we start. And what is the basis for all this? Doubt. Because what happened to all of us? We were scared to be around who?
Each other.
We're scared to be around other people. Which is terrifying. That at what point did we become a society where we actually started doubting each other? Hugely problematic. Hugely problematic. We wouldn't trust each other. And look at the breakdown of society that happened the moment we stopped trusting each other. I hope we learned. Ibrahim at-Taymi, he said, whenever a man oppresses me, I have mercy on him. And here Imam Ghazāli, he says that this is ihsan, that is driving this forgiveness, so that his heart does not busy itself with Allah's disobedience of oppression. So that if he is asked on the Day of Judgment, he would not have to answer anything that had to do with this oppression. He forgave to the point where he did not even want this oppression touching his heart. This is how negative a characteristic he viewed it to be. And this is how much he wanted to distance himself from it. Some of the scholars, they said, whenever Allah wants to weaken a slave, He orders that he be presented with someone to oppress. What do you guys think about that? Right, it's a test. It's a test that He puts somebody who is in a weaker position than you. Because if somebody with a weaker position than me is put in front of me, many times what happens? Right, we will take advantage. And this is why we should not put others in those situations. And even when there are positions that open up, and this is something else that we spoke about before, if there is a position that opens up and I am qualified, I am what? What is the ruling for me to take the position? I'm obligated. Why?
Or someone less qualified could.
Forget that.
It could be an oppressor that could take the spot of oppress others.
I agree with all of these things are right? There's a chance for those things. But what am I doing by not filling it? I'm creating a vacuum. I'm creating a vacuum. And the moment we create vacuums, there's going to be power that fills that void. Always. And if we don't take responsibility, then we will have people who fill those voids, and they're not doing it because they're qualified. They're doing it because why? Because they're taking advantage, they want power, and they want authority. A man came to Umar ibn Abdul Aziz and complained to him about another oppressing him. Umar said to him, to meet Allah and be oppressed in the same state is better than to meet Him than if you had belittled Him. Meaning that it's very easy for that power dynamic to shift. If it's something that you can bear, and it's not overt oppression, set your boundaries and move on. Otherwise, if you try to respond, many times what's going to happen? If somebody punches me, is it possible that I punch him with the equal force that he hit me with? Is it possible his body's going to react the same way my body reacted to that hit?
No.
Right? There's no way to gauge any of these things. And we talk like, yes, a person has a right to do that, he can respond, etc., X, Y, Z. At the end of the day, that balance is a very fine level. And it's very easy for the oppressor, or for the oppressed to become the oppressor. A monk entered upon Hisham ibn Abdul Malik, to who Hisham said, do you see Dhul Qarnayn as a prophet? He said, no, but he was given 4 qualities. Whenever he was able to, he forgave. Whenever he made a promise, he fulfilled it. Whenever he spoke, he was truthful, and he would not put off anything until tomorrow. I read this and it kind of shook me. But the opposite of this is what? In Islam, what did the Prophet ﷺ say the opposite of this? He said these are hypocrites, subhanAllah. He said that the opposite of these characteristics is that this individual is a hypocrite. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. Well, not this, except this last one. This last one I think is a great characteristic. So. Some of the scholars said that hilm, or forbearance, is not showing it when oppressed, or waiting to be oppressed and taking a revenge. Hilm is whenever one is oppressed, shows it, and when he is able to, then he forgives. Right? So he restrains himself, and then he reacts appropriately. In that restraint, he actually sits down, and he contemplates, and he learns to channel this in an appropriate way. Ziyad said that ability takes away from al-hifadha, which is spite and hatred. I mean, and look at all these negative characteristics that Ghazāli focuses on throughout these chapters. And it's just to remove those anchors from the heart, and in order to lighten the heart. And the lighter the heart is, the better we will deal with ourselves, the better we will deal with others, and the more open relationship we'll have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the reality is, when we start doubting others, when we start doubting people, it prevents me from being vulnerable. Right? It prevents me from actually sharing information. It prevents me from seeking counsel. It prevents me from becoming a better person because I can't engage with others. In this idea of khuluq, in this idea of taqwa, and how closely tied they are, if I can't build relationships with others, and these are people who I can see doing good for me, these are people who I can see contributing to my well-being, how can I build a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Who's given me things which I can't see directly. If I can't be thankful for those direct things, how can I be thankful to the indirect ones? Yes?
I never heard about the forgiveness.
Yeah. Oh.
And then thought, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't forgive somebody that you could forgive, what does that mean?
Yeah, what does it say about me as a person? And you know, in saying that, it's like, I don't want to make a blanket statement and be like, oh, you know, you have to forgive. I mean, there are people who survived rape. There's people who've had their parents killed in front of them. There's people who had their children killed in front of them. There's, you know, there are evil things that happen. So I don't want to put, like, you know, a blanket statement out there that, oh, you know, you should be forgiving in every situation. Like, really, really bad things happen. And in those situations, like, you know, there's an appeal to taqwa that I have, but can I force that person at that point?
No.
Not really.
So that's if you were able to mean.
Yes.
If it is less.
Yes. Right. If it's something within your ability.
Oh, okay.
If this is something within my ability, I should immediately do it. I shouldn't, because the more things I have weighing on my heart, the worse relationships I'm going to have with others.
So you're saying if you're choosing not to, like.
Yeah. Like, you have the ability to. You know what I mean? Like, this is something. Okay, yeah, you $20 and you wanted to go get something to eat, and now you're just going to be delayed, right? It's annoying, but is it something that you can overlook? Right, usually it's not. It's usually not that big a deal. Yes.
Does someone still get rewarded for forgiveness if there's like crazy difference in power dynamic? Like, say someone's like a servant,
Yeah.
and then they're getting oppressed by whoever is like housing them, like, but they forgive them for that.
Yeah.
Are they still rewarded for it? Is it?
Yeah. So the reward is going to be al-ajr ala qadr mashaqqa. That the reward is on the amount of difficulty that's involved in it. An example: if somebody has a drinking problem, and they're walking by an alcohol store. One person, he has no problem with alcohol. They cross the street together, walk, get past the store, and they cross again and they go. Are they going to get, the same action is the same. Are they going to get the same reward? Right, the one who actually has a problem and is actively working to avoid it, he's going to be rewarded. This slave, he will be rewarded, but will his reward be as somebody who has full autonomy?
Not as much.
Not as much. Right, because the space he has to move is this much. There might be venues where he has a lot more room to move and his reward can be more, but concerning this particular issue, he only has this much room to move anyway. So how much is his reward going to be? It's going to be less than somebody who has full ability and full autonomy. Make sense? A thief entered Ammar ibn Yasir's tent at Siffin. Do you guys know Ma'raka Siffin? It's like one of the most famous battles during the Civil War of the companions. It was said to him, "Cut his hand, for he is from our enemies." He responded, "No, hide his fault so that Allah would cover mine on the day of judgment." Ibn Mas'ud came across a man whose money had been stolen and he was making dua against the thief, right, this person. So Ibn Mas'ud, he responded saying, "Allah, if the one who stole was in need of it, then bless him in that. And if he did it out of sin, then make it the last of his sins." Again, so a lot of this is perception, and he was trying to teach this individual to have this cognizance. Like, don't have this negative attitude. Don't even make negative du'as. If you're going to be not just positive, but you want to be positive in what you ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because an individual who's constantly asking for negative things, who is he not asking for? Who is he prohibited? The moment all of these negative dua that I'm making, who am I not making dua for? Myself. Like, I'm not making, like, first and foremost, I'm not making dua for myself. I mean, does anybody make negative dua against herself? You know what I mean? Like, like, I hope not, anyway. But these negative dua that I'm making for others, and I'm busying myself with making dua against people, the one person I've forgotten is myself, and I can never improve. You see how these things really hang us down, and they really anchor us, and they really pull us away? This is why it's important to have a light heart. Because I can overlook things, and I can just keep moving, and I can keep going. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us like that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can a homeless steal food if it's absolutely necessary?
I mean, that's between him and Allah. Legally, no.
But like, I'm not sure.
what's the
Like,
question?
can you just
The question is, like, can a homeless man steal? So,
steal food, necessary stuff, not an iPhone, right?
but there's no way for me to gauge that. Like, as an observer, even individual needs, they're different and they change. So what he's stealing, is it actually a need? That's between him and Allah. I'm not here to judge. But if there's something that's law, it's law. The only time that Umar radiallahu anhu, he lifted the punishment was why? Because there was what do you call it?
Famine?
There was a famine. It wasn't because like one or two, you know what I mean? There's a handful of homeless people. It was because there was actual famine and everybody was suffering. So if you have these individual cases, again, can Allah forgive them? Absolutely. I mean, but again, that's between them and Allah. As for what concerns us is like whatever the legal code is, this is something that has to be respected and abided by. Somebody had their hand up here? No? Okay. And I think this is the last one, but it was said that it is written in the gospel, whoever forgives the one who oppresses him has defeated the shaytan. And again, this idea, these negative attitudes like animosity, hatred, spite, jealousy, anger, these ideas of revenge, this idea of like, really channeling all this negative energy toward things. These are things that actually weigh down the heart. And these are things that we should always try to remove ourselves from in order to better ourselves. Yes?
I don't know if you've heard that like story where there's this brother who was in a courtroom and had his son murdered.
Yeah.
And the defendant, they got the president like this for these different not forgiven him.
Yeah.
But it was because of shaitan and he killed the son after doing it.
Yeah, subhanAllah.
And then tried to-
Yeah, I mean, it happens. Like you have people like that. You have people like that, and I don't know if I could be that big, and I hope, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prevent us from ever being in such a situation. But you need a big heart. Like you really need a big heart. That's tough. Any other questions? Yes.
I was going to ask, it's kind of a common question.
Sure.
And I hate to bring her up, but she passed away this week, and when there was on the news about the Queen, right?
Yeah.
And then there was some negative comments. So they interviewed a person from an African nation who said, I don't feel sad
Okay.
because she has taken so much from us.
Mm.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But and then another one was like, if we could just sell her carrots, her gold carrots, it would solve half of the world's hunger.
I mean, maybe for the day. When it comes to like logistic distribution of some of those goods, we have a lot of money being distributed now. Where do you think it's going? Into people's pockets. Yeah, forget the food being wasted. It's going to administration. It's not, it's not reaching the people. But anyway, it's a side political discussion.
I was thinking about that because the guy from, I can't remember the African nation, but he said, I hope she gets what she deserves.
Yeah, I think walking around with that anger, I not to say that I don't get it. I definitely, I get it, but at the same time, do you think she gave him any space in her head at any point in her life?
No.
Like just be very honest. Why should we give others like free rent in our heads? Like there's so many things for us to focus on. There's so many ways for us to better ourselves. There's so many things that we can do. Like how many of you actually cared on the Queen's death? And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. That's what I'm saying. Like nobody cared. It was just another event, that happened. At the same time, what benefit is it for me talking about her now? Like, you know what I mean? Like cursing her or saying that this happened or like, she was evil and da. Okay, and what? Is that going to change the reality or change anything? The only thing it's affecting, who it is affecting?
The guy who's
Me, right? It's affecting me. And it's again, these things that weigh on our heart. And when we have things that weigh on our heart, it prevents us from having meaningful relationships. And those meaningful relationships, it can be with others, it can be with ourselves, and most importantly, it can be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have to cut all of these negative ties. These negative ties don't help bring us any closer. And a lot of times, like even the people who come regularly to the masjid, I wonder sometimes, it's like, what kind of negativity is going on that they're so angry at everyone. And this, alhamdulillah, it's not everyone, but there are a few people. It's just like they're coming to the masjid and they come regularly and they're coming angry, and you have to wonder and you have to ask, like, what's going on? All of these things we do, all of these acts of purity that we make, and these things that we do to draw near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, should it not remove all the darkness and hatred and enmity from our heart? And should it not make us better people and have better relationships with others? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar." That the prayer, it keeps you away from vices and evil. Is not evil and vice like looking down on our brothers and sisters? This is extremely problematic. Extremely problematic. And like, again, I'm not here to doubt anyone's attention, but this is something that really requires address. Yeah, so like having these negative emotions, and it doesn't make sense. Like I don't understand. It should make us lighter people. It should make us happier. If it's making you angrier, then that it really requires a lot of introspection. I'm like, why am I getting angrier? I should be a better person. I should be more humble. When I deal with others and I deal with myself.
I'd like to add not just the Queen. How many companies profit off the colonization? How many shareholders, stockholders? Do we not blame those alongside others? Should not
us? How many of us benefited?
Through the colonization, because of the industry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's some things that just aren't quantifiable.
We all speak English.
I know, right? We speak we don't speak the Queen's English. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
If we seek forgiveness from somebody that we wrong,
Yeah.
and they say, just like you said in the beginning of the talk, you said that person doesn't truly forgive you for if they decide to do some consequence, like whatever it may be, like cut ties, for example.
Sure.
So that's not true forgiveness. So if you did your part to try to amend something with somebody, if they still choose not to forgive you, what happens in the next life then? That's
up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right, so number one, I think there's a misconception also, like, and I don't think people mean it like this, but they kind of say it like it. It's like almost like they can hold God hostage. You know what I mean? Like they're like, oh well, I will never forgive you, as if their will has some effect on Allah. Like it's so arrogant. Like, you know, if you actually like think about it, it's so arrogant to have this belief or to feel that, oh, I have my will has some effect on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will. I don't think that's fair. And if a person sincerely seeking forgiveness from another, at that point, if the person is like, no, I can't forgive you, they have that right? They can do that. But what choice do I have now? I just move on. I move on. I seek forgiveness from Allah, and I keep going. Yes.
What about in terms of like
Yeah. Yeah. So the thing is, like, either there's going to be forgiveness or there's going to be recompense and accountability, right? So one way or the other, either a person is going to be forgiven or they'll be held accountable. Accountability can be through some type of temporary punishment where they're thrown into the hellfire, or it can be these people can be from those people who are on the plains, on Ashab al-A'raf, what is between paradise and heaven. I mean, and the thing is, because it's like an unseen discussion, Allah knows the reality of how that actually plays out. The only thing we can do is like try to do the best in this world and try to keep things as balanced as possible. Yeah, Fazia.
My question is related to that because I've heard people say, Allah forgives, but if the person doesn't forgive you, which is related, and maybe you already answered it, that Allah can say, yes, you can go to heaven, but then you can't get in because this person said.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, do you practically think anyone can hold Allah hostage?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. I think it makes people feel good, you know, because yeah, you know, it's like there's so many ways that it can play out, right? You know, there can be a transfer of deeds, there can be a punishment. Allah knows, like Allah knows what the reality is. But the only thing I can say for like surety and certainty is that you can't hold Allah hostage. It's like it's not like He's going to send you wherever you deserve to go, like period, regardless of how I feel about it. He's like, man, he got in. You know what I mean? Like who cares? Like it's like it doesn't matter what I. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's salty, like oh man, like how did this guy make it? You know, like it is up to Allah. You know, He's forever merciful and He's forever, you know, like knowledgeable and wise. He knows who deserves it and who doesn't, regardless of how I feel, regardless of how I think. Yes.
But what if that person's like your grandparents' parents? Like, isn't that like an actual like? Not gonna forgive you because like I'm holding you.
So do certain people's lack of forgiveness have more weight? I don't want to, like, so the problem I have with this is there's like a lot of cultural baggage that's associated with that. You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, I will never forgive your children, and it's like, what? Like, I don't like that blackmail. I don't think that's a healthy way of dealing with problems or issues that arise. It's like, if you marry this guy, I will never, you know what I mean? Like, really? Come on, man. Like, is this how you want to go out? Like, is this the hill you really want to die on? Yeah, it's not. Yeah, that's what it is. It's just blackmail. It's like, okay, well, you know, I'm interested in this girl. Well, where is she from? Like, somewhere else. No, I'm not even, like, okay, like, why don't you do, like, do you want to, like, talk to her? Nah, I'm not even trying to talk to her. It's like, bro, come on, man. Like, and if you dare, you know, I'm like, no, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. I'm sorry.
I'm sure you've been in like encounters like that. Are you allowed to officiate legally? Or like?
No, I mean, legally, if all parties agree, right? You know, so if people, people are like, you know, can you go talk to my father? I'd be like, no, that's not going to happen, because he'll just slam the phone in my face. Like, he'll be like, I don't care who you are. But if he's willing to come to my office, he's coming into my space, and I can actually address it, and I can talk to him. Saying that, it's usually, like, just being very honest, it usually boils down to the choice of the two fiancés on what they want to do. So sometimes they want to overturn their parents. Sometimes unfortunately, there's no right or wrong answer. But, you know, a lot of times I'll tell them things like, okay, hey, listen, there might be a chance where your kids don't see their grandparents. I'm just being really honest with you. But is this relationship worth it for you? And I've had people say yes. Like, they're just like, yeah, I've been abused, I've had a bad thing, blah blah. I don't care if they make that choice. Like, they are so oppressive that they're not letting me, you know, build in these ways. I've had fathers like tried holding on to their daughters until like they're in their like, huh? What happened?
What is that one?
I don't know. Yeah.
When
Like,
the father refuses to love his
yeah, oh, it's like, yeah, it's, I don't know what it is, but it's like, yeah, it's like, no, she has to like get her third post-grad degree before. Yeah, PhD, okay, like 27, 28, all right, no problem. It's like, you know, 35, and it's like, no, she still needs to do more. The other thing that baffles me is like these girls who agree. You know what I mean? They're like, yeah, you know, I do have to get a career. America stop you from doing that. Like it doesn't. It's not a preventative measure that's going to stop your life. Like, you know, your life doesn't stop when you get married. Like, yeah, it changes. There's no doubt, but it's not going to prevent it. Yes.
What about if like a person's in that situation, but the parent blackmails their child and says that, you know, because I'm wrong, how they curse you, but the parent.
Oh wow. That's blackmail. That's blackmail. No, it's not. Like, unless you're actually doing something oppressive, like, you know, if you're physically abusing your mother, yes, right? Other than that, no. Like, you have to be completely in order for something like that to actually apply and actually happen. It's not. I don't understand. Like, I really don't understand. Like, how it's like, okay, we want to teach you to be free. We're going to teach you to be independent. And then when it's time, we don't want you to be free or independent. Okay, like this. You baked your own cake and you're mad that it's chocolate instead of vanilla. Like like literally, it's beyond me. Yeah.
If the parents can actually object if it's the wrong marriage.
Listen, I've had parents come to me like, hey, listen, Imam, he doesn't have a job, he does drugs. Like, I'll be like, okay, yeah, you're an idiot. Why are you marrying this guy? You know, like, and that makes sense to me. Be like, okay, well, why aren't you marrying your daughter off to this guy? It's like, oh, well, he's not from our tribe.
Yeah, that's a stupid.
I was like, okay, do you have, like, no, it's like, okay, do you have a problem with his? Do you have a problem with his deen? No, do you have a problem with his deen? Do you have a problem with No, I'm saying, like, do you have a problem with his deen? Do you have a problem with his manners? Do you have a problem with, like, how he carries himself? Do you have a problem with his status? Like, okay, do you have a problem with any of these things? No. Like what? I don't understand. Like, what is stopping you? You know, alhamdulillah, the culture is changing. You have more parents who are more open. You have more parents who are more willing. Like, just a few weeks ago, there was a marriage between like a Somali and a Pakistani brother, and I didn't praise them. I was like, you guys didn't do anything. Yeah. No, I was like, you guys, you know, I mean, like, you're both American. You're gonna marry whoever you're attracted to. I was happier with the parents. I'm like, you know, a lot of time, and the father, he came up to me later. He was like, man, you don't know the number of Somalis that came up to me and they said, what are you doing?
I'm not going to name them, but believe me, I had a conversation last week after we left your class.
Yeah.
There is a young Somali sheikh. He's married, with children, but I was in shock. I changed his mind by giving him da'wah. I said, you're supposed to give me a da'wah.
Yeah.
I said, if you are a sheikh and you went to alim school, but you are saying I object Somali girls marrying foreigners. This is
my question is, what is a foreigner? All these kids are American. None of them even, like, half of them don't even speak Somali or know how to eat, like, what Somali food tastes like. Yeah.
If they don't object you coming from another country,
Yeah.
it is the tribe. Somalis to me,
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up here, but I believe my.
Well, it's everyone. No, it's everyone's Zamzam. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mia, and then go ahead. Shema, sorry. My name's, yes. Yeah. Allahu Akbar.
In that case, right? Parent, either or mother or father,
Yeah.
child, don't marry.
Yeah.
No valid reason.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that they're, from a different country. What do you do then if the child doesn't want to disobey?
If they don't want to disobey?
The parent is just.
No, they have, like, listen, at the end of the day, everybody's free. They have a choice, right? Slavery has been abolished. That a child has a choice whether or not they want to disobey. Here, I won't even use disobey is the wrong word, or whether or not they disagree. right? Because this is a disagreement issue. This person, he's religious, he's practicing, he can financially provide for me, XYZ. The Prophet ﷺ said, he said, marry your daughters to someone who has deen and khuluq, and if you don't, you will only spread fitna in the land. This is Sahih hadith. If I find someone who is good for my daughter and I'm not marrying, I am creating, remember the vacuum, power vacuum we were talking about? That's exactly what happens. And then we talk about, oh, what are the problems we have in the community? It's because we are not marrying our children off.
This is the
Yeah.
fitna we're facing now.
Yeah.
Fitna,
Yeah.
with the Prophet ﷺ.
Yeah. I know, and it's,
Yeah.
well, you
Person
feel that you see, like, it's, oh, well, they're young, and blah, blah. Okay, yeah, they're young, I completely understand, but are both parents willing to step in and support them? And if the answer is yes, why are you not marrying them?
Well, define young.
Yeah.
What about in the case of like, let's just say because I've heard that, even though the family, the immediate family might not be racist,
Yeah.
it could be that the external family might be racist. And
Yeah.
of course you have to look at your children, right? You want your
Uh-huh.
children to be accepted.
Sure. So are they going to go back? Are they going to go back to those countries where they're going to face the racism?
Let's just say those individuals, even in the community, let's say like there's a big Pakistani community,
Yeah.
there's a small Somali
Yeah.
community, there's a big
Yeah, yeah.
Arab community. So it's like you're looking at a trajectory of like a lot of other people.
How
They view it.
how many masajid are in a 5-mile radius? No, I'm saying, no, so like if you have support of your immediate family, then they are going into it with the understanding like, hey, we're going to have to defend my son or I'm going to have to defend my daughter. And that's fine, because you're voluntarily, again, this is a voluntary relationship, and I'm going to stand for my values, and the truth, it always triumphs, always. And if you know that others are wrong, and the moment that we start confronting people, you know what happens? People back down. People always back down. And as long as if the immediate family is okay with it, who cares what the extended family says? You know why? Because they're not going to contribute anything. They're just really not, they're not going to do anything for you. The immediate family is going to be, if the husband loses a job, who's going to be the one that looks out for him? It's going to be the immediate family. Extended family is not going to care. They'll make dua for him. But it's the immediate family that's going to be the one that looks out for him. You know what I mean? So like a lot of these things, they're very important to keep in mind.
But sometimes
Yeah.
they're involved in the family. Like, you have a lot of cousins that come over. There's people that
Again, is the immediate family willing to stand up for their son or daughter or not? That's it. If they're willing to stand up for them, it doesn't matter. Because they know every time that they bring up something, they're like, I told you not to talk about it. They're going to stand up and be like, listen, I don't appreciate that. Oh, and not just that, what happens is it ends up becoming really ugly for the other people. Be like, oh, didn't they marry? Aren't they from the same tribe? And didn't they get divorced a year later? You know what I'm saying? Like, and that stuff happens. It's real. So again, if the immediate families are for it, I don't see a problem. I don't see an issue with it. And as for like disagreeing with the parents, it's a disagreement. That's what it is. There's no right, and I'm telling you, there's no right or wrong answer. Meaning that if the daughter or the son decides to disagree with their parents and go forward with it, and they've taken counsel from other elders in the community, go for it. And if you're like, no man, like my parents are really important, I really need them in my life, that's your decision too. There's no right or wrong answer.
So for a female
Yeah.
that needs like the relief to marry the mom and the
Yeah.
relief the father, he said no.
Yeah, it needs to be explored. Allah knows best. Allahu a'lam. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.